there, and welcome to another video of Nurse Talks. This video will be about the immune system. The immune system is a system in the body that seems to be very complicated. It is complicated for the fact that it involves many cells. It involves many cascade of events, really, that happens when there is an infection or when there is or there are pathogens, for example, that enter into our body. So the immune system, as much as it is considered to be a difficult topic by many people, it is also an area in science, and specifically in the areas of human biology. It's an area that's also very interesting. In fact, in medicine, we have, or there is that field called immunology. Yes, it is known to be difficult, but at the same time, a lot of advancements have actually taken place in immunology. In fact, many of the drugs that are being sold right now in the market are, for example, copying how an antibody works. And if you really think about it, from years and years ago, the progress that has been made in the areas of immunology is really huge, and this has also lengthened the lifespan of the human race. If we are to look back through historical literature, the lifespan of humans was really short, and this can be looked into from literature that dates back during the medieval times or even years and years before that. And if you really think about it, for example, if one has a tooth abscess. Now, tooth abscess can happen to many people, or a tooth decay, a tooth abscess, there's an infection in the gum and in the tissues surrounding the teeth. If this were to occur from years and years ago, wherein we don't have the same level of medical advancement as right now, like there's no antibiotics, there's no dentistry, then most likely the person would be experiencing severe infection that can then result to sepsis, which is really fatal. Right now, because of the advancement of medicine and the presence of medications that are really available in the market, such as antibiotics, and there's also the field of dentistry, this tooth abscess can be easily managed. And this is just one example, really, that are some of the few advancements in medicine that has lengthened our lifespan. And in immunology, there has been so many advancements. So the immune system is that intricate system that is widely distributed in the body. And when we talk about the immune system, we always think of the defense mechanisms. So you have your first layer, or the first line of defense, which includes the mechanical structures in the body, such as the skin, the mucous membranes, and these mechanical structures, which are external and superficial, they are capable of really protecting us from foreign substances. And as long as they are intact and there's no break in the continuity, like for example, no break in the continuity of the skin, and the skin is really well taken care of, it's not dry, then it does an amazing job. Of course, there will be some instances wherein some of the pathogens can really enter, like in the event of, like, if there is a lesion as a result of dry skin or severe dry skin, or there is an I don't know, maybe trauma, irritation, or wound, then there will be a break in the continuity of the skin, and that can affect the how effective these first layers can be in fighting against pathogens and foreign particles or foreign substances. So it does an amazing job as much as it can. And the skin, the mechanical structures, aside from the mechanical structures in the body, there are also chemicals that may be present that are also helping in fighting against the pathogens and the microorganisms. So when we say pathogens, this can refer to the viruses, the bacteria, the fungus, and as well as some multicellular organisms such as worms. Yeah, we can consider them as pathogens, because when we say pathogens, these are this is a terminology that is used to describe the bacteria, the viruses, as they are capable of causing a disease. So these are usually the microorganisms, or it could be a virus as well, that can cause a disease. And we've talked about the first layer of defense, which includes the mechanical barriers and the chemical barriers, such as the sebaceous or the oils in the oil glands, the secretions like the mucus secretions, the tears, for example, saliva. These are chemical barriers, and they also do an excellent job. They usually contain enzymes and some substances that actually fight against infection, and they also help in trapping dirt, like for example the mucus secretions, for example, like in the airway. There are mucus secretions in the airway, so we inhale air all the time, and as much as the air that we inhale, it looks clear, it can be also filled with dirt and foreign particles. And the mucus in the mucous membranes are also doing an amazing job in actually trapping these foreign particles. And with the structure of our airways as well, is it's actually ciliated, so it also helps in moving those particles away from our airways, to the point that we are then able to ingest them, and it goes through the stomach. So the stomach also has an amazing lining, because it's also, again, another example of the first layer of defense, because the stomach contains cells which actually secretes hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is a very, very strong acid. Usually the pH of hydrochloric acid usually is around or below 4. So it's usually around 3.5 to 4. Really depends, but it's highly acidic, and it's capable of fighting off many bacteria and many microorganisms. Because if you really think about it again, the food that we eat, as much as how amazing they look at, they can also be filled with many microbes. In fact, almost all of the things that we see here or that surround us are filled with microbes. Even us ourselves, we are actually inhabited by billions and billions and probably trillions of microorganisms. Our tongue itself is inhabited by, again, billions of microorganisms. So it's one thing you can probably think about the next time you give a kiss to somebody. But that's the first layer of defense, or the first line of defense. This includes the mechanical barriers, the chemical barriers, and then you have the second line of defense, which includes the cells in the body, such as the white blood cells, like the phagocytes. So phagocytes can be your macrophages. You also have other types of white blood cells, like you have the basophils, the neutrophils, and the eosinophils. So all these actually play a role in fighting off the pathogens that enter our body. They're still considered under the non-specific defenses, because they're not really selective in terms of whatever type of pathogens that come in their way. So if there's a virus, if there's a bacteria, they will react onto it and try as best as they can to fight off the infection that is occurring in our body. So they're still considered under the non-specific defenses. So the first line of defense are also non-specific, because they don't really choose in terms of, like the mucus, for example, in the mucous membranes, they don't really choose who or what they are actually trying to trap. The second line of defense, which includes the phagocytes, the macrophages, the mast cells, the other types of white blood cells like the basophils, the eosinophils, neutrophils. So they're non-specific. If there's a pathogen that comes their way, they will act upon it, and they'll help in fighting off infections. Now, there's another third layer in the immune system, which is also considered as the third line of defense, and this includes the more specific cells, such as the lymphocytes, which includes the T cells and the B cells. And you've probably heard about this very recently when you read news or feature articles about COVID-19 and COVID vaccines, because they talk a lot about T cells and B cells. Now, the T cells and B cells are under the category of specific defenses or adaptive immune defenses, because they are capable of actually remembering that particular pathogen that has infected us previously. So if there is a first introduction of a particular pathogen, at first they may not recognize this because they're trying to build the antibodies in order to fight off that pathogen. So usually upon first introduction of a particular pathogen, the person gets infected. But once the person develops the antibodies for that, when the same type of pathogen infects that person, it's going to be recognized by these adaptive immune defenses, such as the T cells and the B cells, and they are able to fight it off, or if an infection does happen, at least the signs and symptoms of that particular infection is at least reduced to a certain degree. So those are the different lines of defenses in the immune system. And as much as we categorize it into two, such as the non-specific and specific defenses, these categorization is just for learning purposes, because in reality there can be some overlap between the two, but just to make things easy for us and for learners, how it's actually presented in the textbooks is just presented that way in a more straightforward manner. Like we have the non-specific defenses and you have the specific defenses. Now, the immune system covers, when you study the immune system, it covers other aspects as well, like the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is another set or network of tubings in the body that allows for the flow of fluid. Because if we are to review the vasculatures in the body, you have your arteries, your veins, and then there's another set of tubings or tube networks in the body called the lymphatic system, which actually carries the lymphatic fluid. So, and this allows to circulate the immune cells to be distributed to the different parts of the body. The lymph, which is the fluid inside the lymphatic system, or the lymphatic vasculatures, contains dissolved substances and as well as immune cells as well. So these travel through different parts of the body, and how they travel is actually much slower than that of the blood that travels in the arteries or in the veins. So they're much slower. And within these networks in the lymphatic system are also lymph nodes, which is usually a collection of the different immune cells, and they're highly concentrated in that level, especially B cells and T cells. That's why when a person experiences an infection or an infective episode, some lymph nodes, or they may experience that some of the lymph nodes are actually swollen, and that's because the immune system is highly active at that time, trying to fight off the infection. And there could be also swelling in the lymph areas because the immune cells are really highly concentrated in the lymph areas. Now, in terms of immunity, since we talk about the levels of immunity, immunity can be developed either through natural means or through artificial means. So the natural way of developing immunity is, like one example, if you got an infection on a particular microorganism, your body tries to build the antibodies to fight off that microorganism. The second time around, you get exposed to the same or similar pathogen or microorganism. That's the natural way of, building immunity, like recognizing the bacteria or recognizing the virus. So whenever we get infected with the same virus or the same bacteria again, our body is actually capable of recognizing that. The artificial way, because there's an artificial way of also building immunity specifically for, some of the infective diseases that are really fatal. We have, or in the medicine side, there has been some vaccines that have been developed to fight off, or at least to strengthen the immune system of a person, so that when such a particular deadly pathogen introduces itself to our body, either through an open wound or depends on the route of infection, then the body is actually capable of fighting it off. The very few examples of vaccines are, like, for example, the tetanus vaccine. So tetanus is a disease that is caused by a bacteria called Clostridium tetani, and when Clostridium tetani actually infects a person, and the incubation period is also done, and it really infects the person, usually this can be deadly, because it usually secretes toxins that paralyzes the muscles, or allows for the severe contraction of the muscles in the form of tetany. But these diseases nowadays can actually be prevented through proper vaccinations and immunization, such as the tetanus vaccine. Like tetanus vaccine is usually given to prevent incidences like this, because the bacteria Clostridium tetani can be found almost everywhere, really, specifically in the soil, as much as sometimes this is highly associated to a rusty nail, but it's not really in just rusty nail that this can be found. So some of these deadly diseases can be prevented really through active or artificial immunity, and one example of artificial immunity is vaccination, because vaccination can either be done through like an example, like through an injection, for example. A weakened version of the bacteria or the virus may be introduced to the body, so that the body is able to build the antibodies for that, so that when such a particular pathogen comes to or infects the body, this time the body is actually able to recognize this pathogen. So that's the immune system in a nutshell, and I hope with this video, though it's very short, but I hope it has given some light as to what the immune system is. And it was a very superficial introduction of the immune system, but the thing is, I want to make it as simple as possible, and make it as easy for whoever views this or listens to this. I wanted to make it easy for them to understand. And in this video, I just actually tried to talk through about the different lines of defenses, wherein we had the first line of defense, which includes the mechanical barriers and the chemical barriers. And the mechanical barriers includes like the skin, the mucous membranes, and you have the chemical barriers. An example of those includes like the hydrochloric acid from the stomach, the sebaceous glands, the sweat, the tears. So these are considered as chemical barriers. And then there are also the second lines of defenses, or second barriers. Should I say barriers? But these are actually considered the second line of defenses, and this includes some of the white blood cells, like the more non-specific immune cells, like macrophages, the mast cells, neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. Then you have the third line of defenses, which are more specific, because they are capable of really recognizing that specific pathogen and remembers that. So whenever a particular pathogen introduces itself in our bodies, our immune system cells are actually capable of fighting them off because they recognize them, they have memory. And examples under the third lines of defenses are the lymphocytes, such as the T cells and the B cells. And those are the different layers in the immune system, or lines of defenses. And then we've talked about the specific defenses and the non-specific defenses, and how we, or people, as people, also acquire immunity, in which we can acquire immunity through natural means or through artificial means. So once again, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope it has given you an insight and some information about the immune system. Thank you very much. You've been listening to Nurse Talks, a podcast about nursing, academics, study skills, health and social care. Don't forget to subscribe to Nurse Talks on Spotify, YouTube or Facebook. Just type and search Nurse Talks IG on Facebook and click like.